Billionaire told the black waitress stay out. Her daughter replied in perfect Chinese, saved $50 million. The moment the deal began to fall apart, no one noticed the little girl standing near the doorway. All eyes were on Victor Langford, the billionaire who had built his empire on precision, control, and an unshakable belief that nothing important should ever be left to chance. His tailored suit was flawless, his voice measured, but the faint tightening of his jaw betrayed something rare. He was losing. "This isn't what we agreed to," one of the Chinese investors said calmly, sliding a document across the table. His tone was polite, but firm enough to cut through the room. Victor leaned forward, scanning the revised terms. His expression darkened almost instantly. A $50 million discrepancy. Not small, not negotiable, catastrophic. Behind him, the private dining room of the luxury restaurant was sealed off from the outside world. Soundproof, exclusive, reserved only for the most powerful clients. Crystal glasses shimmered under soft golden light, untouched plates of gourmet food sat cooling, forgotten. Everything had been arranged perfectly. Except this. Victor exhaled slowly. There must be a misunderstanding. The lead investor smiled faintly. There is no misunderstanding, Mr. Langford. These are the updated conditions. Victor's fingers tapped once against the table. He didn't like surprises. And he certainly didn't like losing money. "Excuse me, sir." The soft voice came from behind him. Victor turned sharply. A waitress stood near the door, holding a tray. She was dressed neatly, but her presence felt out of place in a room like this. Not because she didn't belong, but because this room wasn't meant to notice people like her. Her name tag read, Angela. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said gently. "I just wanted to check if you needed anything." Victor cut her off, his tone cold and dismissive. "Stay out." The words landed harder than he intended, but he didn't care. This wasn't the time. Angela paused, her eyes flickering for just a moment, not with anger, but something quieter. Something that had learned to endure far worse than sharp words from powerful men. "I understand," she said softly. She turned to leave, and that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't, because standing just outside the doorway was her daughter. Lila had been sitting in the hallway for nearly an hour, her small legs tucked beneath her, a worn notebook resting in her lap. She was used to waiting. After school, after shifts, after long nights where her mother worked double hours just to keep things steady. She had learned patience early. But she had also learned something else. Listening. The door hadn't fully closed. Voices carried. Languages, especially. Lila tilted her head slightly, her brow furrowing as she caught fragments of conversation drifting from inside the room. Mandarin. Fluent. Fast. Subtle. She didn't just understand it. She heard what wasn't being said. Inside the room, the investors exchanged glances. Victor spoke again, his frustration carefully restrained. These terms weren't part of the original agreement. The lead investor responded smoothly in English. "Business evolves, Mr. Langford." But then, he turned slightly toward his colleagues and said something under his breath, in Mandarin. Something he didn't expect Victor to understand. Something he didn't expect anyone outside their group to understand. Except, Lila's eyes widened. "That's not right," she whispered to herself. She stood up slowly, clutching her notebook. Inside the room, tension thickened. Victor leaned back, calculating, but something felt off. He couldn't prove it, but instinct told him he was being cornered. The investors remained composed. Too composed. As if they already knew how this would end. Victor's silence stretched just long enough to feel dangerous. And then, a small voice broke through the tension. "That's not what they mean." Every head turned. Lila stood in the doorway. Angela froze behind her, eyes wide with panic. "Lila." "No." But it was too late. Victor stared at the girl, disbelief flashing across his face. "What is this?" "I'm sorry," Lila said, her voice steady despite the weight of every gaze in the room. "But they're not saying what they're saying." The lead investor's expression flickered, just for a second. Victor noticed. "What do you mean?" he asked sharply. Lila hesitated only briefly before stepping forward. "They told you the terms changed," she said. "But in Mandarin, they said something else." Silence. Complete. Absolute. Victor leaned forward slightly. "Go on." Lila swallowed, then spoke clearly. They said if you don't notice the hidden clause, you don't deserve the deal. A ripple moved through the room. One of the investors shifted uncomfortably. The lead investor's polite smile tightened. Victor's eyes sharpened instantly. Hidden clause, he repeated. Lila nodded, stepping closer to the table. Page 4, second paragraph. It looks like a standard adjustment, but it changes the profit distribution after 6 months. Victor grabbed the document, flipping quickly. His pulse quickened. There it was, carefully worded, easy to miss, but devastating if overlooked. $50 million, gone. Victor's gaze lifted slowly to the investors. This time, the silence felt different. Not controlled, not confident, exposed. You were hoping I wouldn't catch that, Victor said quietly. The lead investor cleared his throat. It's standard practice in some negotiations. Victor raised a hand, stopping him. No, he said, it's not. He turned his attention back to Lila. How did you know? Lila looked down at her notebook for a moment, then back up. I've been learning Mandarin for 3 years, she said simply. From library books and online videos. Angela stepped forward, her voice trembling. She teaches herself. Every night. Victor studied the girl in front of him. There was no arrogance in her. No performance. Just quiet certainty. You understood everything they said? He asked. Lila nodded. Yes, sir. Victor leaned back slowly. For the first time in years. He had been wrong about someone. The meeting didn't end the way the investors expected. Victor closed the document carefully and slid it back across the table. We're done here, he said. There were protests. Polite at first, then sharper, but Victor stood, signaling finality. The deal was off. $50 million, saved. But that wasn't what stayed with him. As the room emptied, his gaze shifted toward the doorway where Lila stood beside her mother. Angela looked apologetic, almost fearful. I'm so sorry, sir, she said quickly. She didn't mean to interrupt. Victor shook his head. No, he said quietly. I'm the one who interrupted. Angela blinked, confused. Victor stepped closer. He looked at Lila again. Really looked this time. Not as a distraction, not as an interruption, but as someone who had just changed everything. What's your name? He asked. Lila, she replied. Victor nodded once. Well, Lila, you just saved me $50 million. Lila shifted slightly, unsure how to respond. I just told the truth, she said. Victor exhaled softly. Something about that answer stayed with him. The following week, Victor couldn't stop thinking about the moment. Not the deal, not the money, the girl, her voice, her confidence, her honesty. In a world where everyone seemed to be calculating angles, protecting interests, and bending truth when convenient. She hadn't, and that unsettled him in a way he didn't expect. So he did something unusual. He went back. The restaurant was quieter during the afternoon. No private rooms, no high-stakes negotiations, just soft music, scattered guests, and the gentle rhythm of everyday life. Angela almost dropped the tray she was holding when she saw him. Mr. Langford. Victor gave a small nod. I was hoping to speak with you, he said. Angela straightened quickly. Of course, sir. And Lila, he added. A few minutes later, Lila appeared from the back, her notebook still in hand. Victor gestured toward a table. May I sit? They did. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Victor leaned forward slightly. Why Mandarin? He asked. Lila's eyes lit up just a little. I read that it's one of the most spoken languages in the world, she said. And I like how it sounds. Victor smiled faintly. That's a good reason. He paused, then added, you taught yourself everything. Lila nodded. Yes, sir. Victor glanced at Angela. She's remarkable, he said. Angela's expression softened with quiet pride. She works very hard. Victor looked back at Lila. I'd like to help with that. Lila blinked. Help. With your education, Victor said. Proper classes, resources, anything you need. Angela's eyes widened. Sir, we couldn't possibly. You already have, Victor interrupted gently. He turned to Lila. You reminded me of something important. Lila tilted her head slightly. What? Victor leaned back, his voice quieter now. That value doesn't always come from where we expect it. Lila smiled softly, and for the first time, Victor Langford didn't feel like the most powerful person at the table. He felt like someone who had just been given a second chance to see the world differently. Months later, the deal Victor had walked away from was replaced by something better. Cleaner, fairer, stronger, but even that didn't compare to what had truly changed. Because sometimes, it wasn't about the millions saved. It was about the moment someone chose to speak up, and someone else finally chose to listen.